Hey guys, I'm at Lutton's Methodist Church here in Goodlettsville, and in the cemetery behind the church is where Grandpa Jones is buried. We're going to see if we can find his grave and check it out. Now there's the church. If you come over here this way, there's a little plaque dedicated to Grandpa Jones. Tribute to Grandpa Jones. But I'm going to show you how to find his grave from the parking lot. Church just let out. That's why there's nobody here except for one car. Now go through this gate in the cemetery and I'll show you how to get to his grave. This is a very old church and a very old cemetery. But straight ahead up on this hill is where Grandpa Jones is buried. He got his name Grandpa Jones because he was walking around stage. Just got off of, I guess, a long tour, and he was walking like an old man. And they said, "Who's that, Grandpa?" And that's how he got his name, Grandpa Jones. And the boots he wore on stage come from a guy who gave them to him from the Civil War, and he wore that same pair of boots his whole career. But Grandpa Jones played on Haws and the Grand Ole Opry, and he has several good songs. But Grandpa Jones went to church his whole life here. And this would be his wife, Ramona. She also played with him. She played his backup band. Grandpa Jones, from my understanding, was married once before, and this would have been his daughter. She is not actually buried here, but here's a marker here. She was in the U.S. Army and made pretty high ranking. View of the cemetery. A bench for you to sit on. But Grandpa Jones, he had a heart attack on stage at the Grand Ole Opry and died a few days afterward. But he was a nice, comical guy, and I always liked his music. I spoke to several people here. They said Grandpa and his wife, Ramona, went to church here for many, many years. Grandpa Jones's property is just over there, behind the woods. And his wife actually remarried after he passed away. A few years after he passed away, she actually married the preacher of this church. I don't know if I'm supposed to tell that, but that's what happened. And his daughter still attends church here. And it's a pretty nice church, pretty nice cemetery. But it shows the character of him. He went through, he started going to this church before he was famous, and he continued to go to church after he was famous at this same spot. Grandpa Jones was one of my favorite characters on Haws, and I remember him on the Grand Ole Opry. But that was the grave of Grandpa Jones and his wife, and I believe his daughter. But now we're just going to walk around the church and the cemetery and see what else it has. I guess this is the newer part. The Casey family. I guess they're all still living. I met the man who was the great grandson of this lady here. She died at 102 years old. He came in on leave in Korea War and she passed away, so he went to the funeral. But the significance of that is, in 1850, she was a teenager during the Civil War. So he has a direct link to someone from the Civil War, and I spoke to him, so I have a direct link to someone from the Civil War. And also an interesting story, Frank and Jesse James, I presume, robbed a bank in Russellville and went through Bowling Green, Kentucky, where I'm from, and stayed at the Lost River Cave, but they had a posse chasing them, and they come up this way, Goodlettsville, to stop and water the horses. Well, his grandma actually fed the Jesse and Frank James and the younger gang, and in return, they gave her a $20 gold piece, probably from the bank they robbed. But that's a pretty neat story, I thought. But that concludes my video of Grandpa Jones and a little history about this cemetery. It's here in Goodlettsville, Tennessee. Want to check it out? It's on Find a Grave. It's not real hard to find.